Hey everyone, I'm Joe and today I'm going to be talking about everything that I read in August 2017. Now August was a really good reading month. I read 16 books in total comprising 5 different genres. So this is pretty much comparable to the previous few months where I've read roughly the same amount of books and indeed a decent amount of genres as well. Now this video should in theory be relatively short, I hope, because many of the books that I read in August were parts of longer series, and frankly I don't want to talk about them too much because I will probably give away spoilers, and there's not much I can say at this point, when you're more than halfway through a series or such. So, but I've said this before about videos though where I think they're going to be short and then end up somewhat long, so we'll find out. The first 4 books that I read were by Lois McMaster Bujold, and I don't have any physical books as I read them on my Kindle. And those 4 books are, I have to read them off: A Civil Campaign, Falling Free, Diplomatic Immunity, and Winterfair Gifts. Winterfair Gifts is a novella, and the other 3 are 3 full-length novels within her Wukosigan Saga series. Now, currently, this series comprises 16 books. I am now more than 2/3 of the way through. Actually, by the time I read this, I'll be almost complete with the series. There'll only be 1 or 2 books left, frankly, which is kind of sad. The series follows, it's a science fiction series as well, and it follows a series of characters related to the Wukosigan family. They're not always actually Wukosigans of the focus of the book, however. Most of the books do indeed focus on Miles Wukosigan. However, some of the earlier books focus on his parents, and a few of the books focus on other characters who are very intimately linked to Miles or the Wukosigans in some way. Like, for instance, I know one of the books is based on his cousin, one on, well, I'm not going to say too much about that, and indeed I can't say too much about these because, they are more than halfway through the series and I'll give all spoilers away. But suffice to say, I loved all 3 of the novels, and indeed then I loved the novella. The novella was quite interesting because you see the return of several characters from previous books, one from a more recent book, one from one of the older Wukosigan novels, and it also has some sort of both really light moments in it, but some sort of more sad moments, which was an interesting mix, frankly, and I just love these Wukosigan novels, and I will be doing an overall Wukosigan wrap-up or sort of overview, I suppose, of the series in the relatively near future, probably about October, I would guess. The next book that I read is also a novella, and it also happens to be by Lois McMaster Bujold, and that is Penric's Fox. Now this is the 5th book in the Penric and Desdemona series, although it is the 5th book written in the series. Chronologically, however, this is actually the 3rd book, so it fits perfectly in between the previous 2 sets, which do sort of follow on and are obviously heavily interlinked. Now, Penric is a young guy at the start of the first novella, and essentially he's walking down the road one day, he bumps across a dying woman, and essentially this woman is a sorceress. She's a sorceress, however, because she has a demon essentially inside of her, and she dies. The demon then sort of goes over to Penric, and he then becomes a sorcerer, magician, wizard, whatever you want to call him, and he has a series of adventures, let's say, because of this. I don't want to say too much about Penric's Fox because it's the 5th one written, the 3rd chronologically. I will give away spoilers, especially as this does have a certain connection to both the first 2 novels and indeed the next 2 novels, which previously were a bit of a jump in between each other. There were a good 5 years in between the 2 sets. This is somewhere in between them, and yeah, I really did enjoy this. It's got Bujold's usual fantastic writing, great characters, and just a really fun and well-placed plot. And frankly, I just love Lois McMaster Bujold now as an author. So I can't praise this book enough. We need obviously the Wukosigan novels because they're all just really fun. So now it's finally time to buy some physical books around. And the first of these, well, the first two of these, in fact, is The Caves of Steel and The Naked Sun, both by Isaac Asimov. Now, Isaac Asimov is, of course, extremely well known in the science fiction genre, and indeed outside of it. For one thing, he's known very much for I, Robot, which they made a film of with Will Smith, and indeed, this book, or these two books, are set in that universe, in the Robots universe. The Caves of Steel is the first Robot novel, The Naked Sun is the second, and there are two more novels which I do actually own up there, and indeed I will be reading them in September. And I will be doing a overall Robot series review or overview. I'm not really sure what I'm going to call it yet, again in the near future, so I don't want to say too much now. But suffice to say, I really enjoyed these novels. They are both cleverly written. They've got light moments, they've got darker moments. They touch on some really interesting subjects and sort of try to go in depth on what it means to be human and what it means to be sort of part of the universe in general. You know, what is humanity's place in the universe, and if there are other people out there and other resources that we can gain, should we just go out and get hold of them, or should we hold back? The whole raft of questions that these books asks, and frankly, I really did enjoy these books. But I'll talk more about them in the semi-near future in a video, like I said. The next two books are The Last Man and The Survivor, both by Vince Flynn. This is the 13th and the 14th book in the Mitch Rapp series, of which there are 14 books, technically. Now, there is actually now a 15th book, and there will be a 16th book in the series. However, these are not written by Vince Flynn. Vince Flynn died before the 14th book, this one, was actually published, and indeed the series is now being carried on by Kyle Mills. But I'm not interested in basically carrying on with the series. These are the Vince Flynn Mitch Rapp novels, and that's what I've started with, and that's what I'm going to end with now, so I'm going to die with them. Basically, this is a series, it's a thriller series, where the main character is essentially an assassin and sort of counter-terrorism operative for the CIA, and he's running around killing bad guys who are trying to harm Americans in some way, and they're fairly sort of straightforward, but they are fairly fun. However, the earlier novels I enjoyed far more. These two novels felt overly familiar, and frankly, the actual character of Mitch Rapp is now becoming frankly annoying, and I don't like the character of Mitch Rapp anymore, which is surprising, because in the earlier books, the reasons why he's doing what he's doing are still dubious. You know, it's sort of it's kind of a grey area, but at least he's doing it for what he believes is the right reason, and he's trying to genuinely help. And he's not as bad as the character in personal matters as well. By this point in the series, with these two though, he's starting to become very unpleasant, and frankly he's not as much fun to read about, and because, well, frankly, he's unpleasant as a character, genuinely. His opinions on people and the world have now become rather more jaded, and frankly it's not nice to read, which is a shame. But you know, I mean, it's a 14 book series, so it's just one of these unfortunate things, frankly. The next two books are Service with a Smile and A Pelican at Blandings, both by P.G. Wodehouse. Now, these two books are part of the Blandings Castle series, of which there are 12 in total. These are the 8th and 9th that I've read. I don't plan to read the other 3 because the publisher of these, Arrow, doesn't do the other 3 themselves, and frankly I'm not that bothered about trying to get hold of them and read them, because they will be very familiar, because indeed every book, they are humorous books, follows a very particular formula, which admittedly can at times get a little bit predictable, but they are still extremely fun, and they do make you actually genuinely laugh. Essentially each book is about Lord Emsworth, who is a upper class sort of absent-minded lord in his country house called Blandings Castle, and essentially there's all sorts of misunderstandings and people pretending to be other people. Often they want to steal something from his house. There was always a group of younger characters in the book who are, sort of star-crossed lovers of some kind, who are also normally pretending to be other people. And it's just like mad, frantic plot. They're really enjoyable, and I'm really glad that I've read these books. I will read more books by P.G. Wodehouse in the future. Which books, I don't know. Possibly I might try the Jeeves books at some point. But, I'm not in any hurry though, because, I don't happen to own any other books by him. So for now, P.G. Wodehouse is done for the time being. I'll see in a year or two though, and then I'll, see what else I can read by him. But yeah, I did like these. They're just fun and enjoyable and mad, which is great. The next book that I read was Pirate King by Laurie R. King. Now this is the 11th book in the Mary Russell and Sherlock Holmes series. This is a sort of mystery, sort of crime and detective series. Obviously, it is an alternative, obviously, on Doyle's Sherlock Holmes books, of course. In this one, she's changed up the sort of idea of Sherlock Holmes, but he's still the same person, obviously. And indeed, Watson, for instance, does make appearances in other books. Not this one, though, but he does. And various other characters are linked in them. This one is an interesting one, because in this one, Mary Russell and Sherlock Holmes basically think that there is a case of piracy of sorts going on, but this piracy is to do with a film studio and a particular director. And I was a bit unsure what I'd find of the plot, of course, because it sounded a bit peculiar. And it was a very interesting book, because it uses both the sort of almost like a film noir, sort of old-fashioned sort of movie ideas, what with pirates and sort of tropical locations, mix them in an interesting way, and it all just really works together. And as always, the main two characters, Sherlock Holmes and especially Mary Russell, are really good characters. They are developed well, they interact well, both with each other and indeed every other character, and these are just extremely well written and very thoughtful mystery novels. And indeed, I really am enjoying this series, and indeed, you will be seeing more of these series in upcoming videos, because at this point now, this is 11th, there are currently 15 of them, I believe, which I actually happen to own, so this won't take me too much longer to read through these. Probably about October I'll finish the series again, which would be sad, but these series do end eventually, sadly. Next up, I read an ebook on my Kindle, and that is The Shadow of What Was Lost by James Islington. Now this is the first book in the Lycanius trilogy, I think that's how you pronounce it. Now this is an epic fantasy novel. Basically, you cannot help thinking, well, at least I couldn't help thinking, of The Wheel of Time by Rob Jordan whilst reading this. Essentially, this is The Wheel of Time. I cannot thinking of it, but if it'd been more heavily edited and essentially condensed and a bit more precise and neater. Because The Wheel of Time, I enjoyed The Wheel of Time, but it was quite long and drawn out at times. This is a lot more neatly edited and a lot more focused, and I really did enjoy this novel. I'm not going to talk about the plot too much, because frankly I'll give away spoilers, and I may do a separate review of this. I'm not sure yet. It's always hard to do reviews, especially of ebooks. I find ebooks actually quite hard to review compared to physical books. I think it's something about having a physical book in my hand, and it somehow makes me remember everything I need to remember. Ebooks, where I've just got my Kindle, more tricky, but we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I really did enjoy this. It's a very impressive debut novel, and I will indeed be reading the second book and indeed the third book whenever that happens to be released in the future, because this really was a good novel and an impressive debut. The next book that I read was The Goblin Emperor by Katherine Addison. This is a grand fantasy novel. The idea of it is quite simple, relatively speaking. All the cast are not human characters, they are unspoilingly goblins. And essentially, the main character is living in the countryside, and one day he's told by his manservant of sorts, or butler, whatever you want to call it, that the emperor has died, and in an accident of some kind, and he is now to become the new emperor. So he has to go to the capital and learn the ways of court and all the political intrigue that goes along with it. He's suspicious of the fact that the emperor and several of his other members of the family, of which he is related to, of course, died in an airship crash. He thinks it was murder, not an accident, and it has all sorts of political intrigue and really interesting character dynamics in the book. And to be honest though, at the start of the book, for about the first 50 or so pages, I was a little bit unsure if I'd actually enjoy this book, because it just doesn't move along very quickly at the start. However, once you get into about page 50, at least it did for me, it really does improve massively, and I loved this book. It was absolutely fantastic once you get into it. It really was. It's just well written. The character interactions and the intrigue, like I said, are fantastic. They're really intricate and delicately written and cleverly written as well. The world is well realised, but you're given a fair bit of leeway in regards to sort of, trying to sort of create the world in your own mind. You're not told every single detail. You can let your imagination create it for you, which is really nice. And frankly, I loved this book. I really did. All I'm going to say is, as I mentioned, if you're having a hard time at the start of the book, do give it a bit of time though, because I had difficulty at the start, but I'm really glad that I actually persevered with it, because it really does work out extremely well. The penultimate book that I read was Gateway by Frederik Pohl. Now, this is obviously one of the yellow-spined science fiction masterworks, of which I obviously have quite a lot, as you may or may not know. In this book, basically the plot revolves around this sort of space station of sorts called, nicknamed Gateway. This is an alien space station that humanity has found within our solar system. We don't know why it's there or what it's to do with exactly. There is no trace of the aliens themselves. All there is on this space station is essentially hundreds upon hundreds of very small spaceships, which we cannot alter and use for our own purposes. These spaceships have essentially flight computers built into them, which we cannot access because these ships are extremely strong, made of some material that we can't even touch. And essentially, the only thing that we can do with them is to essentially pay a load of essentially astronauts hazard pay to risk going on these ships in either 3s, 4s or 5s and see where these ships go and record their observations and see what happens. And a lot of the time, not that often, but the characters will end up going on these ships and they will come back dead. In some cases, the ships never come back. In some cases, they come back and find something extremely valuable, some piece of technology or material which humanity can and indeed has made extremely good use of. This book focuses on one character who, frankly, and I apologise for the language, but it's basically an arsehole, this character is, and which is unusual for me to say things like that, but he really is. He's not a nice guy, and he essentially sort of, I can't say too much about the plot because there are some interesting little twists that could give things away if I said too much about it. Basically, he wants to go on one of these big journeys and find something valuable and then come back and obviously then live the life of luxury because of his super valuable find, and then he never has to work or do anything else ever again. But he has issues with going on the ship because he's got a fear of it due to a personal issue that he has. And indeed, it's this personal issue that makes him come across as, well, like I said, an arsehole, because, I mean, now, he's written that way on purpose, I have to admit, obviously, but even so, the book is hard to read because of that, though, because, yes, he's an arsehole on purpose because of the plot, he needs to be that way, but it doesn't make the book any easier to read knowing that's done purposely. So, I mean, I'm still glad I read it, however. I mean, Frederik Pohl is an author that I've read 1 or 2 books of in the past, and indeed I have enjoyed them. This one is okay by comparison. It does have a few interesting aspects to it, but I would have difficulty recommending this, frankly, because of that main character. He's frankly unpleasant to read about, I have to admit, which is a shame, because it could have been good if the character was just less, well, of an asshole, frankly. The last book that I read was Dreamsnake by Vonda and McIntyre. Now this is an interesting one, and indeed a slightly tricky one to sort of categorise, because this is both science fiction and fantasy. It is a full hybrid. Essentially, this is a post-apocalyptic novel where there's been a big nuclear war, the Earth has been devastated, and now the remains of the human population, which are very scattered and indeed very few in number, are now living in various pockets all over the place. The main character is essentially a healer. She's called Snake, and indeed she actually has 3 snakes with her. These 3 snakes allow her to heal people using a somewhat mystical manner, and basically one of her snakes gets killed at the very start of the book, and she's then on a journey to, well, still be a healer. But how can she be a healer when one of the snakes, which essentially allow her to be a healer, is gone? She can't be a proper healer anymore, so she's trying to find her way in the world, but still trying to do her job as a healer. And there's a lot of else to this book that I can't talk about because I will give away spoilers. But suffice to say, it's a really interesting premise. It's a very peculiar world, and indeed the characters are quite rather unusual, but overall it does work together extremely well. You've got to be willing to give it a chance, however, because at the start you could be mistaken and thinking it's just a very weird and sort of experimental novel almost, but it does really work well. And there is actually another novel set within this world. I don't think it's a direct sequel, it just happens to be linked to it in some way, so I'm interested in reading that, hopefully in the near future, but it depends on when I get hold of it. So that said, that is it for all the books that I read in August. Overall, a rather interesting and varied selection of books, which I generally greatly enjoy. Obviously, there's a few misses here and there, but generally I did enjoy everything. If you've read any of these and would like to talk about them, then please leave a comment and we can have a discussion. Otherwise, if you have any suggestions on books you think I might like based on any of these, then again leave a comment, because I'm always open to new books and indeed new authors. I mean, frankly, I'm actually very eager to read new authors. And with that said, that is it for this video. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you another day. Bye for now.